Hello, my name's Corbin Gossett. I'm a Senior Product Manager at AWS, and today I'm going to be going through Nimble Studio. Before we dive in and talk about Nimble Studio, I want to begin by discussing what the ideal working environment is for creative people, especially those working with a team of creatives. What does it look like for a team of artists to be able to focus on doing what they do best, which is creating content? Let's take this example. If you're a child drawing on a mural with your siblings, your working environment might include a large piece of paper, some colored pencils, and some toys for inspiration. Of course, you'd be in the same room, lying on the floor next to your siblings, and talking about what you're drawing. This working environment helps cultivate these creative ideas. You share them with your siblings, you put them down on paper, you inspire each other. Now, what does this creative environment look like for a team of professional artists creating computer-generated content? Well, obviously, feature animation and visual effects are more complicated than murals drawn by children on paper, but that environment, that creativity, that foster of collaboration, the freedom to express yourself, those things are still very relevant. And that's what we wanted to achieve with Nimble Studio. We wanted to create the ideal working environment for creative people. We can break down the needs of artists into three categories. Their working environment needs to contain all the tools necessary to create their art. Whether it's a paintbrush or content creation tools like Maya or Nuke, creative people need tools to generate their art. Artists also need to be able to collaborate and seamlessly share those ideas and creative outputs with their team. And finally, artists need this environment to give them the creative freedom. The environment should not hinder this process, but actually support it. And when we talk about this creative working environment, we want to ensure that it will adapt and scale to accommodate the many different types of projects with different complexities and different sized teams and even different locations. This environment should support everything from 2D or simple 3D animated shorts to complex 3D animation with more realistic rendered materials to fully simulated visual effects for live action films or television. However, building this type of environment is easier said than done because when it comes to creating content, there's a lot of moving parts. This can get really complex. Software packages, licensing, plugins, versioning, terabytes of data, high-powered workstations, the render farm, they all need to be set up and configured so that the project data can get from one artist to the next, all while the artist maintains that sense of creative freedom. A lot of studios have been looking at the cloud to handle many of these complicated components of setting up a studio infrastructure. While there are a few studios that have already migrated to the cloud, such as Untold Studios, Crown VFX, Hive VFX are a few, building a studio in the cloud can be difficult. A while back, we published a reference architecture and a series of guides to help studio admins build their own do-it-yourself studio. Although this is helpful, it's still quite a lift. The guide was hundreds of pages of long, tutorials to take days or if not months to implement, depending on the infrastructure skills you have in-house. And our goal is to help customers by lowering that bar of entry and providing a path to success when moving to the cloud. And while animation and visual effects studios tend to hire a lot of really talented technical people, they may not be cloud experts. Luckily, AWS just launched a brand new service for creatives by creatives. Introducing Amazon Nimble Studio. Nimble Studio is a service that simplifies how you build and operate your cloud-based studio. It provides virtual workstations, cloud rendering, shared storage, all for digital content creators who produce visual effects, animation, and really any kind of interactive content. So let's discuss some of the benefits of using Nimble Studio. Think of Nimble Studio as your kind of central hub for your studio infrastructure that allows all of your resources to be under a single studio. You have user management, where you can add users and control what access artists have to what studio resources. Artists will be able to log in through an artist-friendly portal. They don't have to go through the AWS console. They can collaborate remotely because all of the infrastructure is now in the cloud and they don't need to be in the same physical location. They can access project data on a scalable cloud file system. This means that when you need more space for your project data, you can add more space with just a click of a button. And archiving older projects to a lower cost Glacier storage is just as easy. Your artist can also render on an elastic cloud-based render farm. When you need more render resources, they're already on hand. So crunch time becomes a lot less stressful. And of course, you have access to the API. This gives you more power to customize your studio and leverage all the other services that AWS has to offer. So let's take a look at Nimble Studio from the artistic perspective. All right, so this is the Nimble portal. This is the artist-friendly kind of front end that we provide access to for the artist. And in this case, I'm representing Carlos. Carlos is a storyboard artist that is, let's say, out of Vancouver or Washington. Really, it doesn't matter. He's connecting up through, you can see here, US West, Oregon. And basically, the front end allows me to kind of choose how I want to start my streaming session. So we'll have all the project data. It'll have the machine, the render farm, things I need access to as an artist. So in this case, I have access only to a single 4XL large. This is the machine type that the administrator has assigned to me, as well as the software. And then I get to choose as an artist whether or not I want to stream through the client or through the browser. And what's nice about this is that if I want to use the browser, I could actually be down at Starbucks grabbing a coffee. I need to log in and check a render real quick. I can do some quick work. Or I can go home and then use my native client on my big screen monitor or at work. But it's the flexibility that you have here. And then, of course, I can see what is associated with this launch profile. So when you click on the launch profile, I can see it has an Active Directory. I have my FSX for Windows, which is my storage. I have access to the render farm, and I can see the instance types and the software that I have. And so really all I need to do is just go ahead and launch my workstation. And now I have a virtualized workstation really from anywhere. And you can see I'm actually in a browser here. So I can actually bring up new tabs, search to somewhere else. But in this case, I'm actually streaming a virtual workstation from the data center, and I now have access to all my tools. So if I want to actually go ahead and launch Photoshop, I could go ahead and launch Photoshop, and I have access to all my tools. In this case, the administrator provided Anami with a set of tools such as Blender and Creative Cloud and things like that. Let's go ahead and open a new file, and we'll just go, this is a shared storage that now everyone that has access to this same launch profile or this project has access to this data as well. So I'm going to go ahead and load up a file here, and we'll just view fit to screen. Now, what's great about this is, and I'm not going to draw as a storyboard. I'm not a great drawer, but as imagine, a storyboard artist like Carlos comes in and he starts to lay down some, some basic images. This is going to be a scene where Noah's looking up at Ulysses and they're having a conversation. Carlos goes ahead and puts a background in there and starts to add maybe some clouds into the background, maybe a little more definition in those clouds. Maybe he wants to go ahead and turn in a little darker, so that this kind of focuses really on Noah, which is the female character lead in this short. And then just as time goes on, the storyboard artist can continue to work as if they were working on-prem. They could be doing this again at Starbucks. It's really like the goal is to allow the artist to just work within a virtual environment. And it's a desktop just like any other desktop they would be, whether it would be on-prem or somewhere else. And then, of course, you can just continue to add more and more layers until you get the image that you like. And when they're done, they can go over here and save the files, and then they can share this and collaborate with all the other artists that they have working out there. So this would be an example of a storyboard artist. Now, what if we were some other type of artist? So say like a lighter or a compositor. So we'll close this down, and I'm just going to bring up another artist. So this is Martha, and Martha now has access to two different launch profiles that you can see here. So in this case, the surfacing and lighting profile are a little bit different. They have access to different software. So in this case, it's Maya 2020. This one has Substance Painter, Maya, and Arnold. And so I can begin to provide, as an administrator, which we'll talk a little bit later, I can provide access to my artists, whatever the software is needed to do their particular task, whether it's painting, whether it's modeling, and so forth. So in this case, I can do lighting. Now for here, Martha actually has a few more choices. So I can use a regular G4 4XL large, and that's kind of the default machine size. But I also have access to an 8XL large and a 16XL large. So if I have a larger scene or something that I need to do that's a little larger, I can go ahead and start to do that. And again, I can decide whether or not what software I want to use. In this case, they provided, as we saw earlier, it's Maya 2020, Arnold, Yeti 3.6, and of course Photoshop and Shotgun. And so the BYO approach of Nimble Studio is the studio can decide what software they want to bring and utilize through their Nimble Studio. Now, in this case, Martha is using the client, so I can bring up the client and start to work in the client. And you can see I have access, to Nuke. I have Houdini on this machine. I have Blender. So there's a few more options that were set in the launch profile. But then I could basically begin to work. So if I want to start and bring up Nuke, I can go ahead and bring up Nuke. So let's go ahead and launch Nuke. And I can bring up a file. Actually, let's go find the file just to show you a little bit about how this kind of works. Bring up a file browser, and you can see if I go to my top level, I have these two shares. These are cloud-based shares, so both an FSX drive that I have access to, and then I can jump into one of these and go through and find the particular project. So I'm going to go into the NOAA project. I'm going to jump down into sequence. I think I'm working on sequence 100. What is it? Shot 207, and I'm actually in the comp. And we'll go to working here and then jump into Nuke. And so then I'm going to jump into my demo file here real quick. We'll bring this up and I'll give you access and show you how this works. So here we have a scene. This is one of the scenes. Now, you remember the file that Carlos was working on for the storyboard. This is the same shot that was now rendered and lit all on AWS. So let's go ahead and take a look at kind of what this Nuke file is. So if we take a look, there's some layers here. So here's the original image. They wanted to add this kind of very wispy cloud background. And they took the characters and broke them out into a bunch of different AOVs. So if we take a look, you can see here's the direct AOV, there's indirect lighting, there's the specular you can see that we've got going here, there's the indirect, there's transmission, as well as subsurface scattering. And so when you build all that together, of course, then you start to get all of those AOVs kind of combined together. And of course, then they went through and added a bunch of different effects on that. But the idea was that they wanted to bring this over with the background, which you can see here, and add that in with the character. And so they wanted to have kind of this nice kind of atmospheric, nice color, glows, and the pinks and roses to this. And so if we kind of take a look at this, let's jump down here and grab a final scene here. I could actually come in here and play with the color, just so you can see we can change kind of this area right in here. But what's more interesting is I can actually come in and I can brighten that up if I want. So you can see it's kind of starting to brighten up a little bit here. But I can also come in, this was actually a roto that you can come in and look at the shapes in here. So we'll pick the roto, and I can start to pull this out a little bit. But you can see as an artist, like, we want to provide access to the tools so that you really don't notice the difference of whether or not I'm streaming a virtual workstation. And again, I'm just sitting here at home doing this demo, and I'm streaming this from Oregon. So I'm able to kind of come in here and work as if I was sitting on-prem with a desk underneath my, or a laptop or a workstation underneath my desk. And it's no different. And so that's the power of Nimble Studio, which is the ability to kind of come in, and from an artist standpoint, it just feels like I'm working there. I can have dual screen monitors set up. In this case, I have a widescreen monitor, so I can bump it up and have full access to my full desktop, or I can just kind of do this on two monitors, however I feel comfortable. So when I'm done with this, then I can also bring up Deadline, which is the render queue manager, and I can then submit this to the farm and go render out all of these composite frames and have those come back. And then I can go ahead and view those and show them to the director, get any feedback and comments, and that director can be in a different location. They don't have to be, in the case of where I'm at, they're not at my house, but let's say they're on-prem. They can, I can send them the information, and they'll have direct access to the same files at the same time. So that's kind of a quick idea of the artist's workflow, both from a storyboarding standpoint, where I have access to Creative Cloud with Carlos and the storyboarding, and then here with Martha, she went through and set up all the comps and did all the nuke, and then rendered all those frames, and we'll take a look at this short in a little bit. So with that, let's jump back into the presentation, and we'll keep going. Artists access their virtual workstations through a browser-based client for some quick work and reviews, or they can download a client access to their USB peripheral and have access to their USB peripherals and hotkeys. Our streaming experience is built on AWS NiceDCV protocol, and it supports up to dual 4K monitors. This really gives artists the experience that they're used to The goal is to make the streaming experience feel the same as what the artist would experience locally. To achieve this, DCV supports dual screen 4K monitors running at 60 frames per second. The DCV client is compatible with different tablets that artists use. It's also compatible with different OSs that the artist can choose from, and they can choose a web-based client that is fully integrated to Nimble Studio, or they can simply download and install the desktop client for the best performance. DCV is developed with artists in mind, so it's important. Important features such as pressure sensitivity are already built in, and it's constantly being updated to take advantage of the latest technology. And because DCV is included with Nimble Studio, the experience is seamless. To centrally manage your studio's data and make it available remotely to your distributed artists, Nimble Studio uses cloud storage. This storage will house all of the project data that your artists need and quick access to. The data storage volume that gets configured when you deploy your studio by default is an Amazon FSx file system, but you can add additional storage volumes to your studio, including Cumulo and Weka. When launching a streaming session, this storage gets mounted directly to your artist's virtual workstation, allowing them to seamlessly share data and collaborate with other artists. The Cloud Render Farm uses AWS ThinkBox Deadline to manage the render jobs. Artists can submit the jobs to the farm, set their priority, and Deadline handles the rest. To render the jobs, Deadline spins up EC2 instances based on what's in the job queue. This means when you are early on in production, you aren't paying for the render capacity that's getting unused. And when your team goes into crunch, the farm elastically scales to fit your needs. And because all of your production data is already in the cloud, there's no need to wait for the data to upload or to sync to the cloud just to render your work. The same files that are mounted to your virtual workstations are already mounted to the render workers. Launch profiles are a new feature that enables studio administrators to control access to the resources and infrastructure. Launch profiles are geared more towards a production workflow where the studio admin defines what applications, what storage and file systems, and the render farms, along with the machine types. So for example, how much CPU, how many cores, how much RAM an artist can use when they launch a streaming workstation. The administrators share these launch profiles with the artist, similar to how you share your documents in the cloud. So how does an admin set all of this up for artists? Let's jump back over to the demo and see how an admin interacts with Nimble Studio. Okay, let's take a look at some of the administrative workflows in Nimble Studio. This is what you see when you log into the Amazon console, and this is the Nimble Studio front page, and we can go to our Studio Manager. This is an overview of the studio. These are all the resources that you have access to, and this is where we walk you through setting up an individual studio. So you go through these individual steps, like you set your name and your region, you set up your studio, you can add resources, you can add launch profiles, and allow studio access to your users. If I want to add additional resources, I can come over here and click on the Add button. It'll take me to the Studio Resources page, and I can begin to add more resources like additional storages, maybe another compute farm. I want to add additional license servers or a server. Maybe I want to add some more software, and you'll notice that we've already added an Active Directory and connected that. And that's what's managing all of the file permissions and the logins for the virtual workstations. You can see we have 6 file storages set up on here. We have a couple Lusters and a couple FSX for Windows. We have an apps drive. We have render farm, and then we have some license servers. So we have set up some license servers for the different software, in this case, Nuke and Maya and things like that, as well as the different machine images. Now, this is all the software, so you can add additional AMIs. It's a BYO approach, and so this gives control to the studio to define what versions of software, what type of software, whether it's Linux or Windows-based, and of course our Active Directory, and then we have a custom configuration that we've added here as well. Now, the other thing is the launch profiles. These are the things that are adding to allow the access to the users, and I'll show how that works. But first, let's talk about kind of storages and adding additional resources. I can come in here and add an additional storage. We could call this demo storage. I can choose whether or not I want it to be an FSX for Windows or a Luster. I can say where I want it to mount. So on Linux, we may mount on /mount/ demo for the share. We may do a different share for Windows. We could add a bunch of security groups and even add tags. And we talked a little bit about tags in terms of being able to track usage and costs and things like that. And I can go ahead and create a new storage. I can also go and look at additional storages and change the values that I currently have. So for example, if we want to jump over to FSX, we can look at the storages that we already have, and we can go ahead and manage them here as well. So for example, if I wanted to delete this storage, which I don't know why I would want to do that in this case, but we could. But I could also update the storage capacity. I could create a backup of this, so make sure that it's backed up, safe, and secure. I could come in here and do an absolute value. So maybe I want to bump this up to 10 terabytes or 12 terabytes. I could do a percentage of what I already have. Let's say I have a daily allowance or a yearly allowance to go up by 15% through the time of the show. I could bump that up to, like, just say 15%. And then I can go ahead and create that, start that process to update that storage. So with a few clicks of a button, I can now up my storage without having to bring in new racks and new servers and set those up and mount that. Those will already be associated with the studio. And then I just can kind of come back to my Nimble Studio Manager, and I can go ahead and associate those with the studio and manage those directly. The other cool thing that we want to talk about is the managing of the resources that you provide access to the studio with the artist. So these are the launch profiles. And if I take a look, these are all the launch profiles that we have here. And here's a bunch of launch profiles as I log in as admin. And I can see for each one what the values are. So we can see all the different components that are associated with this. So you remember what Martha was doing. Martha was using the lighting profile, and she had access to that FS Windows, that FSX drive there. And then, of course, the different machine types. So the G4, X large, 4X large, 16X large. So this particular launch profile provides choice to the artist. So the artist can come in and choose what machine type they want. For other ones, like in the surfacing one, let's see, here they don't have all of those. Oh, actually they do in this case. But we can go ahead and add additional storages if we want, or different types. And basically you come in and I can go, let's down to the lighting one. Let's go ahead and edit that. And you can see, remember, those were the 4 machine types that we had. Well, we can go ahead and add those machine types. We want to give them maybe access to all the different machine types, or in this case, we're going to remove it down to only a few of those machine types. And we can update that launch profile. And so then the artists, when they log in, will only have access to these machine types as well as these other components, such as the storage components and the license server and things like that, as well as the Omnis. Now, the way you share that is you can come in as, log in as admin, and go to my settings, and I can look at my studio members. These are all the members of the studio, and I can then look at the launch profiles, and I can assign the launch profiles as simple as a share button. So if we let's bring up Martha. So this was Martha's page, and I'll just move these side by side so you can see that. Martha is here in green, and she only has access to these 2 launch profiles. So if I want to come over here and add her to, let's say, a different one, I just basically come over here and say, let's go ahead and add Martha to this particular one. You'll notice that now she's shared with 3, and the next time she logs in, she will have access to all 3 of these launch profiles. So as a freelancer, I might have a freelancer come in and work for a few weeks, and then when they're done, I would come in and say, okay, Martha, we're going to take access away from this particular, we'll remove that. So now Martha doesn't have access to that launch profile. And so what's great about this is that the studio can finely tune and control exactly what resources are assigned to what artists. So back to the console. Again, everything you have based on your user access, based on your studio resources and your launch profiles are all done through the Studio Manager, which is in the console. And then the artists log into the portal, which is a much nicer, cleaner interface for just having access to the project data that I need to work on my task. So let's jump back over into the presentation, and we'll keep going. Because Nimble Studio is an AWS service, it comes with key features you'd expect out of any AWS product. Nimble Studio is deployed on our global infrastructure, so your team doesn't need to be all in a single location. AWS has the highest security standards, and we always built with scale in mind. You'll have access to AWS Premium support, and you have the option of deploying a default studio infrastructure or customizing your infrastructure to fit your needs. You can deploy your studio's custom pipeline and use Nimble Studio as the underlying infrastructure. So years invested in your tools and your pipeline automation are carried over to Nimble. And with the full API support and flexible configuration, this allows you to reuse components that you have or adopt new cloud-centric components where it really makes sense. And of course, studios have full control over their resource management. Now, using tagging, studios are able to report on detailed metrics and cost analysis of the resources used in their studio, such as storage and networking. They can also track their rendering usage and their usage of streaming workstations. They also have the option of breaking down how tasks or artists are impacting these costs. Now, before wrapping up, I just want to quickly talk about pricing. We wanted pricing to be simple and predictable for studios. You only get charged for the resources that you use. For streaming, we bundle all the tools an artist would need to be productive, like a working storage drive for the OS, enough pixel streaming egress to cover dual 4K monitors while you're working, and the networking attached to that storage. Now, some components may vary in cost depending on different parameters. For instance, the virtual workstations vary in cost based on their region, the instance size, and which OS is being used. Amazon Nimble Studio, of course, uses the pay-as-you-go model. We've touched on a ton of information, but I wasn't able to cover everything. So if you'd like to learn more, check out the Nimble Studio website. There's a lot of information, including some great getting started guides. And if you'd like to talk to someone, reach out to AWS Sales. Every studio has specific needs, and our team is happy to partner with you to determine the most effective solution for your team. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope you enjoyed this quick presentation. I want to leave you with one last thing. Let's take a look at Spanner. It's a short created entirely in the cloud on AWS by our in-house creative studio, Fuzzy Pixels. As a matter of fact, if you want to learn more about how Spanner was created, check out our other panel discussion with the creators on how the short was created with Jen Dahlman. Enjoy, and I can't wait to see the kinds of content you guys can create with Nimble Studio. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your SIGGRAPH.
Hi, I'm Jen and I'm a producer at AWS. When it comes to animation, everyone knows stories are important, but often stories can get overshadowed by process. That's why we brought in industry veterans from Pixar, DreamWorks, and Weta Digital to help us build Amazon Nimble Studio, a service that lets artists focus less on process and more on creating. We're thrilled to share our first test film called Spanner, which follows a skilled bridge worker named Noah, who overcomes a few obstacles. I love her personally. She's my favorite. Hope you enjoy.
You go there. Yes, you go there. That's right.
Dora! Hey, Dora!
It's Noah.
Thanks for the lift, boys! Yeah, this thing's wobbly. So, Nora!
So close.
Yeah, the guys over down at 17 were saying you might need my help here with the fixing here.
What's wrong? Another repair went over your head, Elise?
Well, I just thought I could help with the bridge with the underbelly that you're working on. I thought that ooh, bowline, huh? Interesting choice.
That's an anchor hitch, actually.
Oh, yeah, Jacobson or Standardson?
No, it's an anchor hitch.
Well, you know, if I were you, I'd tighten up that dangly bit there, you know.
Oh, good idea. If I were you, I wouldn't go around talking about dangly bits.
Oh, yeah, well, if I were you, I would start by...
Listen, Elise, if you spent half as much time learning your craft as you do pretending, you would be a superior knotsman by now. So just ask me what you want to ask me. I'll tell you.
You should smile more.
No.
I got
You
it.
knucklehead, you're gonna drop my...
Oh, that escalated quickly!
Tool.
You better brace yourself. You better brace yourself.
You know, you should really smile more.